Picture this: the roar of battle, the clash of steel, dust rising under a burning sun, and at the very center, a Roman emperor fighting without armor, defiant and unafraid. Suddenly, a spear cuts through the chaos, striking him down. But according to whispers that spread across the empire, it was no ordinary weapon. Some claimed the spear was thrown by a ghost, the spirit of a Christian saint, avenging the faith. This is the story of Julian the Apostate, the last pagan emperor of Rome, and the man who defied destiny. This is the story of Julian the Apostate, the last pagan emperor of Rome, and the man who defied destiny. Julian's life began in blood. Born in 331 AD, he was part of Constantine the Great's dynasty. But when Constantine died, his sons unleashed a massacre, killing many of Julian's family. Julian survived, a child spared, hidden away, growing up in a world of fear. Isolated, he turned to books. He read Homer, Plato, and the philosophies of ancient Greece. Unlike his Christian tutors, Julian secretly admired the old gods. He believed wisdom and truth came from the ancient traditions Rome once thrived on. This shaped his destiny, a prince of Rome, but not a child of the church. Julian was more philosopher than politician. He studied in Athens, where the crumbling temples still whispered of Zeus and Athena. He absorbed Neoplatonism, a philosophy blending reason, spirituality, and mysticism. While Christianity grew stronger in Rome, Julian dreamed of revival. He saw himself as chosen, not to spread the gospel, but to restore the forgotten gods. Yet, he kept his faith secret, for in Constantine's empire, Christianity was no longer a choice. It was the law. Fate dragged Julian from books to battlefields. In 355 AD, Emperor Constantius II made him Caesar of Gaul, expecting the young scholar to fail. But Julian surprised everyone. Leading legions against barbarian invasions, he proved himself a brilliant commander. At the Battle of Strasbourg, his tactics crushed Germanic tribes, earning him the loyalty of his soldiers. He rode with them, ate with them, even shared their hardships. To his men, he was no distant emperor. He was one of them. And the soldiers began whispering, "This is the man who should rule Rome." In 361 AD, Constantius died, and Julian was hailed emperor. At just 30 years old, he now ruled the Roman Empire. But unlike Constantine, he announced a shocking reversal. He rejected Christianity. Julian ordered the restoration of temples, sacrifices, and pagan priesthoods. He wrote scathing works against the church, calling Christians Galileans and mocking their faith. For his enemies, he was Julian the Apostate, the betrayer. But to his followers, he was the last hope of Rome's ancient gods. Ambitious, Julian sought to prove his strength with conquest. In 363 AD, he launched a massive invasion of Persia, Rome's great rival. His army marched with confidence, crossing rivers, capturing towns, pushing deep into hostile land. But Persia was vast, unforgiving, and burning hot. As the weeks passed, supplies dwindled. The Persians avoided open battle, instead harassing Roman lines, burning crops, and starving the legions. Julian refused to retreat. He believed destiny was on his side. June 26, 363 AD. Near the city of Samarra, the Persians struck. Tens of thousands of soldiers clashed. Arrows darkened the sky, cavalry thundered across the plains. Julian, ever fearless, rode into battle without his armor. He fought like a common soldier, urging his men forward, shouting above the din of war. Then out of nowhere, a spear cut through the air, striking him in the abdomen. His horse reared, he fell, blood pouring from the wound. And here, history splits into two stories. Some witnesses swore it was a Persian javelin, but Christian accounts claimed something stranger. They said Julian was struck by an invisible hand, that in the chaos, no soldier stood near, only a shadowy figure. According to legend, it was Saint Mercurius, a Christian martyr killed a century earlier, risen from the dead to avenge the faith. The ghostly warrior, armed with a divine spear, had struck down the last pagan emperor. To believers, this was no accident of war. It was divine judgment. Carried to his tent, Julian knew he was dying.
Some claimed his last words were, "You have conquered, Galilean."
A bitter recognition that Christianity had triumphed, and his dream of restoring the old gods had failed. At just 31 years old, Julian the Apostate was gone. With Julian's death, the empire turned back to Christianity for good. His successors enforced the faith more strongly than ever. Julian's writings, mocking the church, were banned, though fragments survived. Philosophers admired him as a man of courage and reason. Christians remembered him as the emperor cursed by heaven. For centuries, his story stood as a turning point, the day the old gods finally died, and Rome was bound to the cross forever. Did a Persian soldier kill Julian with a lucky throw, or was it truly the hand of a ghost, the spirit of a saint striking in defense of the faith? Historians debate, but the legend lived on, shaping how generations remembered him. Julian's death wasn't just history, it was myth, miracle, and mystery woven together. The story of Julian the Apostate is one of ambition, defiance, and destiny. A philosopher who became an emperor, a soldier who led from the front, a man who fought not just Persia but an entire faith. And in the end, he lost. Perhaps to a spear, perhaps to something beyond human. This is Story District. For more haunting history, forgotten emperors, and mysteries where legend collides with fact, subscribe now, because the past is never truly silent.